Distinguished colleagues and guests, good afternoon. It's November 25th, 2021, 2 p.m. Moscow time. We're beginning the panel session for the defense of the thesis by Iuliia Zaitceva. The thesis is submitted for the academic degree of candidate of technical sciences. The specialization is 1 to 2 mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and software complexes. The topic of the thesis is the prevention of nonlinear oscillations in manned aircraft control systems. Under the order issued by the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg State University, Alexander Gnatov, as of September 16, 2021, number 8845/1, I'm Marat Yuldashev, Doctor of Sciences in Physics and Mathematics, Professor of the Department of Applied Cybernetics of St. Petersburg State University, was appointed the Chairman of the Board. The order also approved the candidacies of the members of the Board, namely Timur Makayev, Doctor of Sciences in Physics and Mathematics, Professor of the Department of Applied Cybernetics of St. Petersburg State University, and the following members of the board are working remotely today, namely Natalia Stankevich, Doctor of Sciences in Physics and Mathematics, leading researcher of the Department of Applied Cybernetics of St. Petersburg State University. Do you hear us and see us? Yes, I do. Okay, thank you. Alexander Nibilov, Doctor of Technical Sciences, honored scientist of the Russian Federation, head of the Department of Aerospace Measuring and Computing Complexes, St. Petersburg State University of Aerospace Instrumentation. Do you hear and see us? Yes, both. Okay, thank you. And Vanya Barsigyan, Doctor of Technical Sciences, Professor, leading researcher at the Institute of Mechanics, Armenian National Academy of Sciences from Armenia. Do you hear us and see us? Yes, both. And we also have our candidate for the degree, Iuliia Zaitceva. Ms. Zaitceva had two thesis supervisors, and both are with us today, namely Boris Andreevsky, Doctor of Technical Sciences, Chief Researcher at the Department of Applied Cybernetics of St. Petersburg State University, who is participating in the meeting remotely. Do you hear and see us? Yes, both. And Nikolai Kuznetsov, Doctor of Sciences in Physics and Mathematics, Professor, Head of the Department of Applied Cybernetics of St. Petersburg State University, who is present in person. Yes, that's me. And I would like to inform you that the panel session of the Dissertation Board is being recorded and broadcast on the St. Petersburg State University website, and our session is also interpreted into English. Currently, we have an email address posted on the page with the live broadcast of the board session, and all listeners can submit their questions to Ms. Zaitceva online, the questions regarding the thesis or scientific discussion. And thus, they can participate in the discussion. These questions will be forwarded to me by our technical service, and I will read them out during the discussion. The questions must be related to the presentation and to the content of the thesis, and do not forget to give your name and position if you submit a question. The questions that have nothing to do with the scientific discussion or the dissertation discussion and anonymous questions will not be voiced. Under the order on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, approved by local normative acts, the session of the Dissertation Board is valid, providing 2/3 of the appointed board members are present. The total number is not to be fewer than 4 people. The Dissertation Board consists of 5 people. Everyone is here today, including 3 members of the board who are working remotely, and we have a multimedia connection with them, thus we have a quorum. And I would like to ask Natalia Karpova to fill out the attendance list. Our session should not last more than 2 hours, and the agenda is as follows. First comes the chairman's presentation about the documents submitted by the candidate for the degree and their conformity with the requirements. Chairman's replies to questions, if any. 5 minutes for that. Second, the candidate's presentation providing an overview and findings of the research. 15 minutes for that. Then questions to the candidate regarding the presentation. 2 minutes per question. The candidate's replies to the questions. Reports on the thesis. The board members will be taking the floor in turns to provide their reviews and questions to the candidate for the degree. 10 minutes each. Then the chairman's report on the thesis, 10 minutes as well. Then the candidate's comments about the reports on the thesis and replies to the questions, if any, 20 minutes for all. Then we're going to have open discussion, speeches by those present at the defense with brief presentation of their positions or questions or suggestions to the candidate on the topic of the research. And don't forget to state your full name, academic rank, position, and place of work in the registration list. And don't forget to introduce yourself before I give you the floor. Then the chairman will ask the questions submitted during the broadcast via our website. And I would like to draw your attention to the fact that written questions that will take more than 2 minutes to read out will not be voiced. Then the candidate's replies to the questions, then the presentation of the candidate's thesis supervisors, 3 minutes. Then we may have a 5-minute discussion before the open balloting on conferring or non-conferring the academic degree. The discussion of the results of the defense is not broadcast. Then open balloting. We're going to count the votes and record the results in the protocol. Then we're going to make a decision on whether to confer the academic degree or not. And finally, we're going to listen to the candidate's closing speech. 2 minutes will be given for that. Distinguished colleagues, any questions or objections? Nikolai? No objections? No objections? No questions? None? No questions? Okay, thank you. So, as there are no objections, I'll start with the presentation. First of all, I would like to ask you to turn off the sound on your mobile phones. So, shortly, the thesis by Iuliia Zaitceva for the academic degree of the candidate of technical sciences, the specialization 122, mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and software complexes, is titled The Prevention of Nonlinear Oscillations in Manned Aircraft Control Systems. The thesis was approved for the defense by the order of the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg State University, issued August 26, 2021, number 8265/1. Iuliia Zaitceva has prepared her thesis at St. Petersburg State University. She has 2 academic supervisors. And as for the published works that describe the research findings, there are 9 of such works, and they include 4 publications in peer-reviewed journals recommended by the Ministry of Education and Science, and 3 publications in Web of Science and Scopus. And all the documents provided by the candidate comply with the requirements of St. Petersburg State University, and they are found in the certification file of the candidate for the degree, and the curator of the defense, the member of the Department of Dissertation Board Support, has all the copies of these documents. And before I give the floor to our candidate for the degree, I would like to ask the members of the board, distinguished members of the board, do you have any general questions to the candidate for the degree, and is they need to consider the whole list of documents submitted for the defense? No questions? Okay. We give the floor to Iuliia. Please, Iuliia, you have the floor. Distinguished members of the board, distinguished guests, the topic of my thesis is the prevention of nonlinear oscillations in manned aircraft control systems. And today I'm going to shortly give you the results. First of all, the thesis consists of the introduction, 4 chapters, and conclusion. The introduction outlines the specific characteristics of the thesis. The relevance of the work is mostly explained by the needs of flight security, because the oscillations of aircrafts very dangerous, and another aspect is the study of interaction of pilot and aircraft using the methods of dynamic systems. The scientific basis is the works of academician Bergens on flight dynamics, Dion McCroyer and Alexander Yefremov on pilot-induced oscillations, their reasons, and pilot models, and also the works of Evgeny Khlepalo on linear correction of systems. And for the analysis of nonlinear system aircraft pilot, we used the works of Masafradkov, Chichurin, and Pavlov. And the results were discussed in the thesis, and they were applied when we developed software algorithms for the imitation of the process, and that allowed us to prevent oscillations. The theoretical value is in the development of methods of oscillations preventions methods of nonlinear correction and identification of parameters of pilot aircraft model. And we also improved the modeling methods of aircraft pilot system, and we applied these methods on flight simulators. In the work we studied the following things. Also, pilot-induced oscillations, non-damping or uncontrolled oscillations that emerge as a result of pilot effort during the control of the plane when inadvertently the pilot gives excessive signal due to the delay of reaction. Then, feeling excessive play of the aircraft, the pilot gives the signal, a reverse signal, that becomes excessive, and thus we see the fluctuation of the airplane. And from the point of view of automatic control theory, this event is characterized by the loss of stability in the amplitude and phase. And the latter is associated with non-linearity of the control drive, like oversaturation. And in Chapter 1, we provide the analysis of the existing publications on the topic of the thesis. Mostly for the analysis, we use the method of harmonious balance, the function of Lyapunov matrix inequality. Algorithm methods are divided into methods of continuous correction and anti-wind-up correction. And after the analysis of publications, we found out that there's no general approach to the study of pilot aircraft system that would allow us to prevent pilot-induced oscillations. Based on that, we set a goal to develop a methodology for oscillation prevention in aircrafts of aircraft vehicles of aircraft type. And in Chapter 2, we describe the system of aircraft pilot, and we describe the following differential equations here. Number 1, where alpha is attack angle, then pitch angle, delta V deviation angle for control panel, then theta is control of trajectory, and H is the height of flight, V the linear speed of aircraft, and W vertical speed of wind. And we also use differential equations of order not higher than second, and in this work we use the following model too. The equation of first order with saturation, T is the constant of time, then delay time, and U is input. The most studied are the models that describe processes of the central nervous system based on visual perception of the command signal. And in the range of mid-frequencies, the most important from the point of view of system characteristics, this model can be presented like that. That's Formula 3. Where we have coefficient of pilot gain, then the control of pilot signal, then neuromuscular constant of time, and so on. And in Chapter 3, we provide the methodology of synthesis of nonlinear correcting device that would allow us to prevent pilot-induced oscillations. A nonlinear correction method is in the introduction of correcting device that would improve the stability and quality of the system. And in the work, we use the following nonlinear correcting device that consists of 2 separate channels and the formation of amplitude and phase. The phase characteristic is independent of the amplitude and input system that is demonstrated on Figure 3, and the phase shift is regulated by constant of time, T1 and T2. And based on this device, we devised the novel correction device. And in this device, we introduced third channel, U3, to obtain the deviation of the gear on the level and speed. Therefore, the phase shift depends on the value of U3. And based on the described system characteristics, we provided the following algorithm that would allow us to find numerical values for the linear system of an aircraft pilot. After we introduce the initial data, we need to resolve the optimization problem, finding the maximum frequency of the cut of the open system, add set restrictions for the degree of stability, for fluctuations coefficient, and for the parameters of the pilot model. And for nonlinear system, we offered an algorithm that would allow us to prevent pilot-induced oscillations and define the parameters of the pilot model that corresponds to the swing that is different from algorithm 1, due to the fact that in the control loop we have a correcting device, the parameters of which are set so in order to secure the stability parameters that would correspond to the optimal ones for broad spectrum of amplitudes of input signals. Then we perform the steps of algorithm 1, and as a result we get the parameters that correspond to the oscillations parameters. And in chapter 4 we illustrate the work of algorithms using control problems of pitch with the height and with formation flight. So you see the pitch processes for the amplitude of input of 35 and 5 degrees. And thus we can see that at high amplitudes, without correction of nonlinear system, we see certain oscillations. And on this slide you see the excitation index for the system that is found as the upper margin of the system yield. And we also used pitch error here, and we also used wind perturbation here. And both images demonstrate that excitation index is growing infinitely. And on this slide you see bifurcation diagrams that were obtained using the calculation of amplitude frequency characteristic for nonlinear system at a plane of parameters of the input signal. The amplitude frequency characteristic here is found as a relation of the norm of error and to the norm of input signal. And for non-corrected system we see the range of parameters in white that corresponds to rapid growth of the function that demonstrates the change of character of the behavior of the system or the emergence of oscillations. And vice versa, for correction system this area is narrowed quite significantly. And on this slide you see the work of algorithm that is demonstrated for control problems for the height of the flight, and you see that in non-corrected system we see certain fluctuations, and amplitude frequency characteristic is of the corrected system is closer to the linear system than non-corrected one. And figure 1 shows that frequency characteristic of the control of the corrected system gives us the high rise at higher frequencies compared to uncorrected system. And in formation flight we considered the chain structure where trail pilot is being guided by the height of the flight of the leader. And modeling results for the dynamic of the chain structure demonstrate that in active variations of height of the leader we see chain instability that is demonstrated in the scattering of oscillations of the trail flights. And stability is secured by the correcting device that is introduced in the control loop, and that is illustrated on image to the right. And these are the provisions brought for the defense. The methodology of synthesis of nonlinear correcting device aimed at prevention of pilot-induced oscillations, then algorithms and software support in package MATLAB Simulink on the definition of pilot model parameters, then the model of new nonlinear correcting device, and fourth, the results of numerical calculations of the device algorithms using the problems of managing pitch, angle, height of the plane, landing and formation flight. And major results are described in 22 scientific publications, 4 of which are in journals from recommended by the Attestation Commission, 3 in World of Science and Scopus, and 15 in Russian Education Academic Citation Index. And I also have 2 inventors' certificates. And here you see the major publications as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. The question to the members of the board: are there any questions regarding the report that reflect the major provisions of the research? 2 minutes per question. None. Okay. Or do we? No questions. Nikolai? No questions. Vanya? Any questions on the report? No, none. Natalia? May I? So you showed bifurcation diagram, and the analysis of bifurcation was not carried out. Why do you call it bifurcation diagram then? Or did you conduct bifurcation analysis? We call them like that because here you see the areas of parameters that during the slow change of any parameter, they change dramatically. Thank you. Alexander, you had a question? No, I had none. So we had an external review that was a bit outdated, but still it was submitted by Ivan Shestakov and Gennady Kovalenko. That's a dual review. I offered to read it after the speeches of the members of the board. Any objections about that? None. Okay, let's continue. So the board members now are going to provide their reviews on the thesis. And all the reviews were already published on the St. Petersburg State University website. I offered to read just the general provisions, questions and comments. Any objections about that? No objections. Okay. So let us start, and I would like to give the floor to Timur Makayev. Yes, dear colleagues, hello once again. So, in order not to read the entire review, this thesis created a very good impression, and I saw that huge work was done. And this is seen both in the list of publications and by the list of conferences in which Iuliia participated. So I had several remarks that I'm going to concentrate upon. And I'll read this part of my review if you don't mind. Regardless of the high volume of work and overall general impression, I believe it is possible to make the following remarks to the content of the thesis. First of all, the review part of the thesis contains excessive information, as it seems to me. Thus, mentioning that for linearization of the system, the equations should be differentiated across all arguments and the function of the right part should be smooth on page 15. So these notions are quite trivial to my mind, and the applied methods of anti-wind-up correction are mostly dealing to the gear system rather than aircraft pilot system overall, and some sources are a bit outdated, as it seems to me. Here I'm referring to sources 50, 51, 54, and 56 in the list. Second remark. On figure 46, you provide the summarized function of sensitivity for the input signal as a square wave. There its wording provides for harmonious setting impact. Then, on page 7, you have a misprint in the phrase to use preventions caused by, so that's a misprint in the Russian language. And all these remarks, however, are not significant from my point of view, and they do not influence the overall high value of the thesis, that is original and a finalized, finished study. Therefore, I believe that the thesis of Iuliia Zaitceva, titled The Prevention of Nonlinear Oscillations in Manned Aircraft Control Systems, meets the requirements of the order on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University as of September 1st, 2016, number 6821/1, and Ms. Zaitceva deserves the academic degree of the candidate of technical sciences in specialization 122, mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and software complexes. And Articles 9 and 11 of the above-mentioned order are not violated. Thank you. Iuliia, you can answer the questions. Yes, I agree with all the remarks. Thank you. Thank you. Next review. Natalia Stankevich, please, you have the floor. Well, overall, I had a very good impression on the thesis. The structure is well organized, the material is accurate, and we see a lot of illustrations. My two remarks are dealing with the following fact that in order to describe the material fully, you lack the system in the form of differential equations. And in the work, I used mostly numerical methods, and it would be nice to provide the accuracy estimates. And overall, as I've already mentioned, I got a very good impression on this thesis, and it complies with the requirements of the order on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. I believe that Ms. Zaitceva deserves the academic degree of the candidate of technical sciences and specialization 1 to 2, mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and software complexes. And Articles 9 and 11 of the above-mentioned order are not violated. Thank you. Iuliia, you can answer. Yes, thank you so much. I'll bear all the comments in mind, and I agree with all the remarks. Natalia, are you satisfied with the answer? Yes, I am. Next speaker, Alexander Nibolov, please, you have the floor. Distinguished colleagues, being an expert on the dynamics of aircraft flight control, I was very interested to read this thesis and to listen to the report. I believe that overall the complexity of those problems that were considered by the candidate for the degree correspond to the high academic level, and the majority of these problems are indeed successfully resolved. And I would like to mention as well that the setting of the control of movement of airplane in longitudinal plane is particularly difficult because the nonlinear dependencies are present regarding the influence of height on the overall movement process. So here you see the combination of peculiarities of dynamics of the aircraft and also the characteristics of dynamics of the pilot, and everything is modeled quite well. So the modeling is quite good, and many answers were obtained by MATLAB Simulink, and in combination it allows me to make a conclusion that the thesis corresponds to the basic requirements for the thesis of a candidate of technical sciences, and the author deserves the academic degree of the candidate of sciences. Thank you, Iuliia. Yes, thank you so much for the review. Thank you so much for the comments. I'll take them into account. So, Professor Nibolov, are you satisfied with the answer? Yes, I am. Okay, thank you. Next, Vanya Barsigyan, please, you have the floor. Distinguished colleagues, I won't read out my review. It was already published. And I believe it's important to mention the following fact: the topic of the thesis is quite relevant, and the thesis develops approximated methods to study mathematical models for manned aircrafts, and we also saw significant academic results that have a theoretical and practical value. The substantiation and the validity of scientific provisions are not questioned, and the thesis is performed at a high academic level. And it contains the solutions of academic problems that are of paramount importance that would allow to prevent pilot-induced oscillations. And the results can be practically applied in aviation, and they would improve the methods of computer modeling of our flight control system. And I had two remarks that do not compromise the overall high theoretical and practical value of the thesis, and I believe that the thesis of Ms. Zaitceva, titled "The Prevention of Nonlinear Oscillations in Manned Aircraft Control Systems," meets the requirements of the order as of September the 1st, 2016, number 6821/1 on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and Ms. Zaitceva deserves the academic degree of the candidate of technical sciences and specialization 1 to 2, mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and software complexes. Articles 9 and 11 of the above-mentioned order are not violated. Thank you. Thank you so much, Iuliia. Thank you very much for the review, and I agree with the remarks. Are you satisfied with the answer? Yes, I am. So my review then. As it was already published, I won't read it out, therefore let's stick to the remarks as well. So the thesis has arose the following questions. Contemporary control systems are implemented using specialized processes to process signals or computing systems of general designation that leads to delays and errors, depending on the stability of clock generators. How does it influence this flight control system from the point of view of suppression of pilot-induced oscillations? Second question. We have the problem of instability of frequency and amplitude of power supply systems that can bring us different problems in control systems, for example, certain delays. How can we eliminate these effects using the suppression of pilot-induced oscillations? And third question, the method of harmonious balance applies to study the system. Is frequently criticized for ignoring the higher harmonics and inability to detect all the oscillations of the systems. What are the mathematical methods and approaches that would allow us to theoretically avoid these problems? And above all, you have certain formulas and misprints. For example, in Formula 137, you did not put the parentheses, and on page 91, you have some mistakes in the words, but overall, such remarks are rather recommendations. They are quite insignificant. The thesis by Iuliia Zaitceva, titled The Prevention of Nonlinear Oscillations in Manned Aircraft Control Systems, meets the requirements of the orders of September the 1st, 2016, on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University, and Ms. Zaitceva deserves the academic degree of the candidate of technical sciences in specialization 1 to 2, mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and software complexes. And Articles 9 and 11 of the above-mentioned order are not violated. Thank you, Iuliia. Thank you. Do you want to answer the questions? Yes. The first question was about the onboard computers. And here I would say that overall, in order to provide a specific answer, we need to study the discrete form of the system, but overall the delays in time have a negative impact on the stability of the system, and nonlinear correction method has its own limitations that we did not check. The second question, the important factor that is frequently neglected is the instability of the frequency and amplitude of power supply systems that may give different responses in hydromechanic systems to the same signal, depending on thrust and temperature. How can we eliminate these effects to suppress pilot-induced oscillations? Well, mostly I wanted to say that all systems are designed with some additional resilience, and in this issue, I believe we may use software implementation rather than algorithm implementation. And the third question was about the method of harmonious balance applied in the system is frequently criticized for the ignorance of higher harmonics, and what are the mathematical methods and approaches that could be applied to avoid these problems. Okay. By the way, on the topic of the thesis, I had a work where we studied the impact of higher harmonics on the nonlinearity of type of saturation, and the method of harmonious balance was studied, and it was detected that these higher harmonics did not impact. Okay, I'm satisfied with the answers. And now, Nikolai, please read the external review that we received via email. Thank you so much. On the website, we also published the review provided by Gennady Kovalenko and Ivan Shostakov. And I made the description part of the thesis, and I would like to dwell upon the assessments given in the review. Overall, the authors note that the results of the work brought for the defense are characterized by scientific novelty, and they have practical value that is supported by inventor's certificates, and the state registration for software, and also the results were tested at academic conferences, and there are certain drawbacks to our mind. It does not fully provide the flight dynamics model in formation flight, and above all, it does not take into account the opportunity to eliminate the negative impact of humans using satellite radio navigation systems in order to use them jointly for air navigation on land and on the plane. But still, it does not, all these comments do not compromise the overall high value of the thesis, and we believe that the thesis of Iuliia Zaitceva, titled The Prevention of Nonlinear Oscillations in Manned Aircraft Control Systems, is a finished academic study that corresponds to the requirements of the order and the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. And the author of this thesis, Ms. Zaitceva, deserves the academic degree of the Candidate of Technical Sciences in Specialization 122, Mathematical Modeling, Numerical Methods, and Software Complexes. And that's a Professor, Doctor of Technical Sciences, Honorary Worker of Honorary Scientist, of St. Petersburg State University of Civil Aviation, Associate Professor, Doctor of Sciences, Head of the Department of Organization of Transport System of St. Petersburg State University, of Airspace and of Civil Aviation. So, Iuliia, can you answer the remarks? Yes, I agree with these remarks. Certainly in the formation group, we need to take into account these characteristics, and I believe this will be taken into account in the following works. Thank you. Now, anyone willing to comment on the thesis who are not members of our board? No one. Okay, did we get any additional questions on the thesis, on the discussion? No, no questions. Okay. Now I would like to give the floor to the thesis supervisor. Nikolai, please, you have the floor. Mara, thank you so much. My review was published on St. Petersburg State University website, and I wanted to dwell upon the following facts. Here we're talking about the assessment of qualification of the applicant and about the academic work. And I would like to say that the author demonstrated the opportunity to organize independent academic work at a high professional level, the relevance of the problem and the relevance of the solutions that she offered is supported by numerous publications, and these publications are ongoing. You could see it in the presentation. The author has a lot of works published, so the work is ongoing. The author still continues to publish articles, and the verification of the relevance of the provided solutions and the testing of the work was supported by the discussions at designated conferences that gathered aircraft construction experts, and international interest was also mentioned. And currently Iuliia continues to develop this topic within the framework of double degree program, Russian-Finnish, that was jointly organized by our university and the Technical University of Lapin-Ranta. And I support Iuliia in her work, and certainly I support the award of the academic degree of Candidate of Technical Sciences to Iuliia. Thank you. Thank you. Boris, you have the floor. Yes, thank you very much for giving me the floor. My review was also published on the website, and it is fully positive. And I wanted to add a bit to the words of Nikolai about the work of the applicant and about the publications. Iuliia was actively working on the thesis, and it allowed her to finalize it a year in advance. And it should be mentioned that she was highly active in her publications and speeches at conferences, and currently the list of publications for the year 2021 includes 4 journal articles and 12 speeches at conferences, and all these publications were included into the official list. Not all of them were added to the official list because the publications, they are published, conferences pass, and the results were somehow finalized before. And as for the publications, Iuliia asked the leading expert in the country, that's Professor Yefremov, head of the department at MAI. She asked to provide a review on her work on pilot-induced oscillations, and after 2 operations, this work was accepted. Yet another publication that's under preparation for the forthcoming year, that's the publication in the Proceedings of the Academy of Sciences. That journal is published by Aviation System Research Institute, and the editor-in-chief is academician Fedosov. And after certain specifications, her individual work in this journal was accepted. And I really hope that Iuliia will continue to develop this field of study. Maybe, in particular, it would be interesting to consider the application of these methods along with the works of Professor Nebelov, that's landing of order space a vehicle on a floating platform, and she also planned works with civil aviation institute colleagues, because they have pilot simulators where you can test it all. And also that's a promising field of joint work with La Perante University, and she already has some joint publications with these colleagues. Therefore, I believe that Iuliia, first of all, deserves the degree of the candidate of technical sciences. And above all, I'm sure that she will actively continue to develop the topic. Thank you so much. Thank you, dear colleagues. Anyone else willing to take the floor? No questions? Okay. Here we stop the discussion and taking questions. And before we finalize and organize final vote, I would like to ask the members of the board and the candidate for the degree if there are any general comments or questions about the procedure of our session, maybe associated with remote access. Timur, no questions. Natalia? No questions. Alexander? No questions. Vanya Rafailovich? No questions. Okay. Next item on our agenda, the vote. Distinguished colleagues, before the vote, we have an opportunity to declare a 5-minute break to discuss the results in a closed mode. Do we need a break? No, I believe everything is quite clear and we don't need this break. So, what colleagues say? Okay, no need for the break. Okay. If we don't need this closed discussion, let's shift forward. Now it's 17 minutes to 3 p.m. Dear colleagues, we continue our session. So let us check whether we all hear and see each other. Natalia? Yes, I hear and see you. Alexander? I do as well. Vanya Rafailovich? Yes, I see and hear you. Iuliia? Yes? So I see everything and hear everyone. Okay, therefore I raise a question on the award of the academic degree of candidate of technical sciences in specialization 1 to 2, mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and software complexes. And I would like to emphasize that by voting for the award of the academic degree, each member of the board agrees that Article 11 of the order is not violated. And I quote, in the thesis, the applicant for the academic degree is obliged to cite the author and/or the source of the materials or individual results borrowed using the results obtained by the applicant personally or in co-authorship. The applicant for the degree is obliged to know the circumstance in the thesis. And let me remind you that the decision of the Dissertation board on conferring the academic degree is positive, provided more than half of the board members, but not fewer than 3 people, voted in favor. And that's in conformity with Section 17 on the order on the procedure of granting academic degrees at St. Petersburg State University. So let's vote. Professor Makayev, that's me. I vote for the award of the academic degree. Okay. Natalia Stankevich. I vote for the award of the academic degree. Okay, thank you. Alexander Nibalov, your opinion? I also vote for the award of the academic degree to Iuliia. Thank you so much. Professor Barsegyan? I also vote for the award of the academic degree to Iuliia. And I, chair of the board, Marat Yuldashev, also vote for the award of the academic degree. And thus, distinguished colleagues, and I guess I would like to announce that out of the 5 members of the board, 5 voted for the award of the academic degree, no one voted against, and no one abstained from the vote. Therefore, we decide to award the academic degree of the candidates of technical sciences and specialization 1 to 2, mathematical modeling, numerical methods, and software complexes to Iuliia Zaitceva. And we give the floor to Iuliia for the finalizing remarks. Distinguished colleagues, distinguished members of the board, thank you so much for providing me this opportunity to present the results of my work today. And I would like to thank all the applied cybernetics department members. And I would like to thank my thesis supervisors, Professor Andrievsky, for the set problems, for help in their resolution, and I hope that we will continue our joint works in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I therefore close the session. Thank you so much for participating, and please turn off the